Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel today, where we're going to continue on with looking at the Russia and Ukraine crisis conflict which is going on. Now, we're going to focus on one big question today, which is, are the Russian sanctions really working? So that's what we're going to look at today. Now, you'll probably notice it's been 3 days since my last video. This is normal. It's just because over the last couple of days I've been putting together my monthly investment video. If you've never watched one of my investment specific videos before, I highly recommend you watch it. I'll post the link below so that you can go over there. It is paid content though, unfortunately. It is behind a paywall, but it's one of the best macro videos you will watch on how I'm investing going forward this year, based on all the information I have in my head on history, correlating lots of different charts. So that's all I'll say on that. Link below in the description, definitely check that out if you're not sure what to do with your capital and investments this year. So where are we then with what's actually been happening recently? Well, we know that there were sanctions on Russia. So let's look at that. When the sanctions took place, the ruble plummeted. I mean, lost huge amounts, 30% just in the first 24 hours or so. It went down as low as 50%. So these sanctions have really hit the ruble hard. Now, is this a bad thing for Russia? Well, yes, in the first instance, it is. However, one thing I want to draw your attention to is that the media is celebrating the destruction of the ruble in terms of purchasing power. I want you to think about this for a moment. I want you to think about the oligarchs and Putin and the leaders who are actually the ones that are in Ukraine, who have given the orders to go into Ukraine. Think about those people. And now I want you to think about the normal civilians. So these are people just like you and I, you know, family people, mother, father, children. I have traveled all around the world. And one pattern I can tell you is that it doesn't matter where you go, people are pretty much the same. They're good people, they're honest people. What we're now seeing is a demonization of the Russian people, which is quite disgraceful, I would say, that what we're seeing at the moment, this demonization of the people. The people are just civilians, just like you have innocent civilians in Ukraine at the moment who are caught in this conflict. So what I'm seeing is a huge discrimination against Russian civilians in different countries, and really this needs to stop. These people have not done anything wrong with these civilians. They're no different to you and I. Which really brings me on to my first point then. Who is most affected by the ruble just dropping in value so much? The purchasing power, we talk about this a lot on the channel, the purchasing power of the average everyday citizen. Well, do you think Putin and these oligarchs have been hit? Not really. Yes, their assets have been frozen in some regards, but a lot of them got their assets out of the country way before, got it out of dollar-denominated debt way before, because they knew what would happen. You've got to think of the Russians as, you know, they're experts in chess. They always have been. They're very strategic. They're always 5 steps ahead in terms of their planning. Anyone who thinks they've been caught out by this, think again. They've got so many options. And again, people say, oh, you're praising Russia and all this conflict. You've got to distinguish between what I'm saying. Unfortunately, a lot of people can't think clearly anymore, especially over the last couple of years. They can't distinguish between what I'm saying as an unbiased view and taking what I'm saying and saying, you're supporting Russia. I'm doing none of the sort. I'm simply giving you the facts and figures from economic data that I'm viewing. So what we're actually seeing is the oligarchs are really not that much affected. There was an article just out this week about this young lad who had been tracking all of their private jets, and they're flying all over the world. They're doing all sorts of things. There was some undercover reports this week. They're eating in the finest restaurants, staying in the top hotels. How would they be able to do that if their assets were frozen? They're not. They have worked around the system somehow. So who's this affecting? It's affecting the people. The average everyday person like you and I is really suffering right now in Russia. And not just that, it's going to get a lot worse, because their imports now, with the ruble having depreciated, their imports are going to be a lot more expensive. So their currency has devalued. So when they're still buying these products that they would from other countries, well, now they have to spend more rubles in order to actually buy those products. So when you see people celebrating and laughing and very happy that this is happening to the Russian people, you might just want to stop and explain what I've just explained to you here, because I definitely am not celebrating families, women and children who can't maybe afford to buy food later on once this really kicks in. And of course, everything that's going on is really the people who are most impacted right now are the people of Ukraine. My heart and my prayers really go out to them with everything going on. It is absolutely a terrible situation that's going on right now. Now, the other thing that's going on, which is very, very worrying, and it hasn't had full effect yet, is this breakdown in globalization. You see, the reason we're able to buy things very cheaply from different parts of the world right now is because of globalization. We are able to use our currency to buy products and services from the cheapest available supplier that's out there in the world. Now, when you start breaking this down, it means that you have less suppliers to buy goods and services or supplies from. So if you're like me in the West and you think this isn't going to affect you in terms of rising prices, think again, because it is. Not only are you going to see prices in general go up, but you're going to see energy prices go up. Now, when energy prices go up, that's what affects the whole market. The whole economy derives from energy. Now, we're currently going through a very dangerous cycle at the moment. We went from a trade war, now we're into a currency war. What tends to come after this is usually a military conflict, although in the day and age we're in right now, it could be a digital war, could become next, which we haven't really had before in the same regard that we have technology today. Now, after that, and we're already seeing that actually, I should probably even throw that in, we're already seeing the digital aspect of this, the hacking, Russian banks being hacked, Ukrainian banks and infrastructure being hacked. This was one of the things that happened just before the invasion went through. We're seeing a lot of hacks in Russia. The FSB was hacked, the Kremlin was hacked. So we are seeing this cyber warfare now. Now the group Anonymous have got involved. You're seeing civilians getting involved in this. And this is what we need to be cautious of when I'm not including myself in this, but the Western media's warmongering, they are driving us even faster and faster into a war, into World War III. We've got to be very, very careful of this, ladies and gents, because if you look at the BRICS nations and you look at who the allies are around the world, this won't end well for anyone. It really won't. All of these nations are nuclear powers. I don't know about you, but I don't fancy getting into a nuclear war right now. Now, the next question people have been asking me is about Russia being kicked off SWIFT. Is this going to decimate their country and cause all these issues? Yes, in the interim, but what you've got to remember is that Russia has huge resources. So I think straight away, I mean, they've got options. It's obvious to me they've got other options apart from SWIFT. I think they're going to start, I mean, this is just going to push them away from the dollar even faster and towards China and all the other alliance. So I think what's going to happen, they're going to jump straight away onto the CIPS payment system, which is the Chinese system. It's denominated in yuans. Russia and China already swap between ruble and yuan anyway. So I think this is probably how they're going to bypass it. Are the West going to influence China to sanction Russia and, start doing all this? I don't think so. You've seen all this talk at the moment. Oh, China are going to get involved and they're going to sanction Russia. Why would they sanction their biggest ally in the world when it's obvious that the West are not positive towards China? What have we seen over the last couple of years, few years? Huge trade wars, a lot of anti-China rhetoric. All of these things are sort of converging together, as it were. So I just don't see China getting involved in sanctioning Russia and trying to, I mean, if that happened, I just don't know where Russia, they would, you've got to think like North Korea. North Korea is very isolated in what they do. Now, if Russia lost all of their trading partners, they could become like the next North Korea, because what else could they do? They couldn't sell their energy to other parts of the world. They just have to use that energy for themselves. But the other thing I want to bring up is I talked about the imports becoming more expensive, the reduced purchasing power for the everyday citizen. But on the flip side of that, you've also got to remember exports. That means if their ruble is lower, their exports are going to be greater for the Russian economy as well. Now, one point I just want to wrap up on around the Russian civilians is that a couple of weeks ago, they were fairly neutral to what was going on, very calm, etc. But what they're seeing is a lot of Western sanctions which are directly affecting them. So if I were a citizen, I'd be getting quite emotional and upset right now. So really, you've got to look at this another way. And again, I'm not saying the sanctions are a bad idea, but you've got to look at the after effects of sanctions. Because look, the governments have got to do something. They have to do something against what is happening in the Ukraine and the actions Russia's taken. So the Western governments have got to be seen to be doing something. I mean, I'm not denying that. But what I'm talking about is the knock-on effects later on. Taking Russia off SWIFT pushes them closer towards their allies like China. Devaluing the ruble means that the people are going to be emotional and motivated to maybe get involved more in this conflict, and you're going to create two sides, especially with all the fake media that's coming out at the moment. You've probably seen some of the mainstream media. I'd love to do a video debunking a lot of this footage that's coming from video games, and the tank that rolled over the car, which was actually a Ukrainian tank, not a Russian tank. The Snake Island 13, again, fake. There's a lot of all these fake stories coming out at the moment, which is very sad, because it's motivating as well people in the West to get emotional and angry at the Russian people and driving us closer to this war. What we need is some sort of a peaceful resolution at the moment. We need to stop the conflict. We need to stop all the warfare, not America sending all these weapons over and trying to, ramp it all up. All the weapons manufacturers, obviously the share price is going through the roof. As soon as you connect the dots with it all, you see where this is going, and it's not going anywhere good. So that's all I've got to say on this today. But overall, this is not a good situation, and it looks to be getting worse and worse and worse. So that's all I've got time for today. I will see you again tomorrow. Take care. God bless. Speak soon.